Thank you very much, Eleanor, and thank you everyone for coming out this afternoon. In 2015, Community Foundations of Canada released Belonging, Exploring Connection to Community, a national vital signs report that sparked an ongoing conversation about what it means to belong in Canada. So why does belonging matter? A strong sense of belonging is actually key to building safe, vibrant communities. People who feel like they belong are more likely to give back through volunteerism and to take community leadership roles. They also feel less isolated and live longer than people who don't. In a year when we decided to focus Newfoundland and Labrador's provincial vital signs report on the differences in quality of life between rural and urban parts of the province, the new national report on exploring connections to community shows us that there are big differences in sense of belonging in rural and urban areas that affect how we feel about living in those types of communities. Belonging is a two-way street. It's about communities being open and welcoming on the one hand, and about individuals taking initiative to participate in their communities on the other. This year's National Vital Signs focuses on one side of Belonging Street, using the lens of social participation to better understand how we as individuals cultivate our connections to community. The usual measures, social participation in Canada is on the decline. Volunteer rates have plateaued, around 44%, and individual Canadians volunteer 14 fewer hours per year than they used to in 2004. Canada doesn't compare very favorably to other countries for voter turnout. We get a C grade, and voter turnout has been declining steadily since the 1960s. Although if you look closely at the graph here, you'll see that this has been changing. There's a little peak that's coming back up since 2008, which is a positive sign that Canadians are beginning to feel more invested in the democratic process once again. Finally, the number of Canadians that donate to community causes is down by about 3%. But making up for the shortfall, individual Canadians who do donate are donating more per year than they used to, and Canadians aged 55 and over are star givers, contributing 47% of all donations. But even while these traditional means of looking at social participation are down overall, more Canadians are getting out and participating in community groups than ever before. And compared to 2003, more Canadians report good relationships with their neighbors and strong networks of friends. So, how does the average person participate in their community? They might use the local recreation center or library, attend religious services, go out and hear live music, or socialize with their neighbors. In this year's report, Community Foundations of Canada looked at 5 pathways to participation and belonging: the arts, sport, faith, activism, and online interactions, which are of course becoming a more and more important way that we interact with our families and friends. Together, these give us a picture of how people are actually reaching out to their communities on a daily basis. Book groups, murals, music festivals, and a whole range of art performances. They're fun, they're stimulating, but you may be surprised how much impact they have on our sense of belonging. People who go to at least once per year to an art gallery, a theatrical production, a park, or a historic site are more likely than average to feel a strong sense of belonging to Canada. The feeling of belonging motivates them to take positive action in their communities. For example, they're 34% more likely than the average Canadian to do a favor for a neighbor. They also volunteer more and make more charitable donations. And participation in the arts is on the rise. The number of Canadians who go to historic sites, galleries, and other cultural venues has risen about 10% over the past 20 years. 85% of Canadians agree that participation in sports builds stronger communities. Why? Because sport is inherently social. It brings people together both on the field and in the stands. New Canadians even report that they often have more meaningful social interactions playing or watching sports than in the workplace. Sports and recreation groups are the most popular type of community group. 31% of Canadians participate. Involvement in sport is also a gateway to other types of community involvement. So 65% of lifelong volunteers had their very first volunteer experience through sports and recreation. And sport is especially important for rural communities. Communities with fewer than 1,000 residents report more participation in sport than larger communities, which shows us the importance of nurturing sports and recreation in rural areas. Whether it's at a church, mosque, temple, or synagogue, people who regularly attend religious services do report a greater sense of belonging than those who don't. Now, research has shown that it's the social rather than the spiritual aspects of religion that are important to building this sense of belonging. Regularly getting together with others who share a similar worldview and the friendships we foster while congregating are important influencers of our social well-being. 65% of Canadians who attend weekly religious services volunteer, compared with 44% of those who don't. And those who consider religion very important are more likely to have a strong sense of belonging to the country and to make charitable donations. Canada's religious landscape is changing, and our country is becoming increasingly religiously diverse. With almost a quarter of Canadians reporting now that they have no religious affiliation, it's a good time to ask ourselves how we can continue to engage these residents in active community life. Now, when you first think about activism, your mind might go to marches and civil disobedience, but activism comes in many forms. It's about all the ways we get together to try to make things better in our communities. People involved in activism rate higher on several indicators of well-being, including sense of motivation, life satisfaction, and positive relations with others. Overall, Canadians show a bit of a decline in political engagement. We're less likely than we were in 2003 to be members of a political party, to attend a public meeting, to express our views on an issue by reaching out to a newspaper, or to participate in a demonstration. Given that activism is an important way that we influence policies and policymakers to make our communities better places to live, how can we foster this type of participation? Well, the research shows that activism starts at home. Parents who engage in voting, activism, and are members of community organizations raise their kids to be the same way. And we can look to our elders as role models. The percentage of senior citizens who participate in community groups has risen from 45% to 59% since 2003. The last part of the report looks at communities that aren't physical. Whether we're sharing photos with family, joining a forum for people with similar interests, or playing a multiplayer online game, the social nature of our online activity is making the internet a high-speed connection to community. The internet is more and more important as a venue for social interaction. Today, 2/3 of Canadians own a smartphone, compared with just a quarter a few years ago. Percent of households could have access to high-speed internet. Only 77% of them actually do. And we see that the internet isn't equally accessible to everyone. So only about 60% of Canadian homes with income below $31,000 have internet, compared to 95% of homes with income over $80,000. And the internet is also the source of a major urban-rural divide. 99% of urban homes have access to high-speed internet, compared to only 28% of rural households. So now that the internet has become not just a means of communication, but a key source of information and a social hub for many people, we have to begin discussing the value of online technologies and what these disparities might mean for our rural and urban communities. When we get involved in our communities, we gain wider and stronger social networks, access to support when we need it, a sense of identity and purpose, and the knowledge and skills to get things done in our communities. As we welcome new immigrants to our shores, work toward reconciliation between Indigenous peoples and other Canadians, and strive to create communities where everyone feels included, understanding the ways we create connections with the people we live with is crucial to building vibrant and resilient places to live. I invite you to check out the Vital Signs report on belonging at vitalsignscanada.ca and to join the national conversation on social media using the hashtag #VSBelonging. So thank you all very much for coming today, and I hope you will be as enthused as we are as we move on to considering our provincial report.